Hello everyone, it is time to do the full moon in Cancer video. The full moon in Cancer is on January the 13th, Monday for me at 2:26 p.m. And I am recording this on Saturday the 11th, 3:10 p.m. So it's about 48 hours away when we start to really feel the full moon start to take effect more and more. Although, as I warned you and told you in the weekly overview, both last week, or this past week, I should say, the week before and after the 13th of January will have an eclipsey feel, as it has certainly turned out to have in Los Angeles, and more on that in a second. It being 2 months before a lunar eclipse, and for whatever reason, I find that 2 months before a lunar eclipse, the week before, week after, can sometimes have eclipsey events or eclipsey occurrences. I sound very matter-of-fact and cold about this, but I can assure you, especially Tuesday morning, which was the morning after the night when the big blazes burned and the evacuation started, was a stressful day. I did not have to evacuate. Thank you to everybody who thought about me, and some of you left comments, some of you have sent emails. I haven't responded to everything, of course, yet, but last night was the first night when I actually got a full night's of sleep. And this morning, Saturday morning, when I woke up, I felt like, you know, today, Saturday, is the first day, you know, the windows are comfortably open. It doesn't feel smoky. My smoke alarm would keep going off. It was, and anyway, on Tuesday, I did not have to evacuate, but but I was prepared to if it got to that point. And that had more to do with the fire in Altadena, because I'm in Glendale, and there was an evacuation notice, you know, less than a mile away from me. So you just kind of had to gear up, and there was just and then just when you thought things were getting calmer than these other small fires, every day there's been some sort of fire that's breaking out somewhere. And the Palisades fire is still not, I mean, the fires are not completely contained, especially the larger ones. And, you know, I somewhat foolishly, I think, checked in with someone who was evacuated with and I did that because I thought, well, things are calmer in my side of town. They're really not for everybody at all, and certainly not for everybody who lost houses. And we all in Los Angeles, I think, to a person, knows someone or someones who have lost all their belongings. It was like the entire city, for all intents and purposes, has come to a kind of standstill. And it's Saturday as I record this, and I think the earliest we see signs, if everything continues to move in a peaceful direction, of the city kind of starting to grind back into action might be even Wednesday. You know, it might take that long. With the full moon, I always worry, of course, that, you know, things that seem calm, is something going to erupt over the weekend, or is it going to become more heightened? I hope not. I think there are plenty of people there's enough going on in people's lives over the next 48 hours without any new fires or any fires spreading, in terms of what we all have to take stock of, that gives it all a full moony meaning. And of course, this video is not just meant for Los Angeles either, in and of itself. So anyway, it has been an absolutely bizarre eclipsey a week, and hopefully next week we'll kind of see the other side of it. I mean, it could be eclipsey in other ways too. And it's a south node eclipse. It makes me want to go back and see the date of the Asheville flooding and kind of which eclipse it had a correlation with. Anyway, I will do my own kind of nerdy astrology stuff on the side. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm going to put this at the top of the reading again, as opposed to wait till the end, I am running my specials. If anybody wants a reading on the astrology of 2025 and how it is connected to and relating to your birth chart, that is being offered at a discount. The rate varies by geography based on what I can do and can't do and offer, and what is competitive. And I'm trying to do this in such a way that I'm not taking advantage of anyone. So there's an email address in the description box below. Email me there for rates, and I can send them to you, and you can determine if that works for you or not. Okay, so that goes kind of with that. This full moon's setting me up for a few videos that I'm going to have to do, because they're, as you know, the last few videos I've done, I'm pleased with, even though I did them out of a space of confusion. The confusion came from recognizing that I can't view calendar months as a marker all the way till the end of April, even to some extent till the end of the first week of June, because especially till the end of April, as I've been saying to you, it is kind of one astrological heightening blob till the middle of April. And I have done videos on Mars retrograde, which I titled Purge. There's a video on Venus in Cancer and Venus retrograde, and Venus will be playing a really important role this coming week, which I'm going to talk about in the weekly overview I do tomorrow, and some of that is going to get discussed today as well in today's full moon video. And the weekly overview. So those last 3 videos, if you have not watched them, if you want to get a macro overview of where we're at between now and the middle to the end of April to ground yourself, I would particularly take a look at the Mars one, and then if you have time, the Venus one. The Mars Purge video, which is 2 or 3 videos ago, and then the Venus one. The weekly overview is really largely dealing with this week. And as I said, the biggest news was heading towards this full moon, and the fact that the week before and after January the 13th was likely to resonate strongly with eclipsy occurrences. Indeed, for some people, it may actually feel like, rather than being a full moon in the house of Cancer, the full moon occupied by the house of Cancer, for some people it might feel like it's a full moon in the house occupied by the sign of Virgo, where the eclipse takes place on March the 13th, 2 months later. So depending on, you'll be able to tell, if you know your chart, you'll know the house that is occupied by Cancer, the house occupied by Virgo, and you'll have a better or clearer sense of how this full moon is resonating with regard to the South Node full moon eclipse in Virgo 2 months from now, March the 13th, or whether it really feels like a full moon in Cancer, or some sort of a mix of both. I remember when we had the full moon 2 months before the Libra lunar eclipse. Forgive me, no, it was not the Libra lunar eclipse, was it? Was it, give me one sec. No, it was the Pisces lunar eclipse in the middle of September, and we were looking at July the 17th, week before, week after. For a number of people, it felt more like an eclipse in the Pisces part of the chart than in the, what was at that time, I think, was it again a Cancer full moon or something like that? Anyway, I don't want to, a Capricorn full moon. It was a Capricorn full moon. And rather than it feeling like a Capricorn full moon on July the 17th, it felt more like the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse at that time, on the week before, after July 17th. So this was last year, 2 months before the Pisces lunar eclipse in the middle of September. So 2 months before the full moon, 2 months before a full moon lunar eclipse can feel more correlated to with eclipsy occurrences to the actual sign where the eclipse is going to occur 2 months later. Okay, so we have this full moon lunar eclipse that is, because it's in the sign of Cancer, that is ruled by the moon and is disposited by the moon in Cancer. The moon is in her own sign, and there is nobody else so therefore it is a powerful full moon. And this is going to sound like a strange thing to say, a lot of the astrology surrounding it is, it sounds like such a strange thing to say, is powerfully forward-looking and constructive. Now, this is not going to be easy for anyone to hear who has gone through the shock, and it was shocking, of eclipsy occurrences of loss. There's no question about it. It was, to evacuate one night and wake up the next morning, or within 24 hours learn that you got out hopefully with your loved ones and with some important papers, and everything else is gone, is not and then have to kind of start to, where are you going to live? Where are you going to stay? Can you rent something? Do you Airbnb with those offers that are available for a week? How do you pick up the pieces, and how do you start to construct? And who's setting up a GoFundMe for you? And it's a really kind of intense and chaotic time for many people. The astrology, which is what this video is about, I have to sort of make it plain and clear to you. The sun, of course, is in the sign of Capricorn, and the moon is in the sign of Cancer. And the sun, and typically when I look at aspects, I look at approaching aspects, aspects that are occurring within 5 degrees after a particular day, because they're approaching, they're increasing, they're gaining power. With a full moon, though, I also look to 5 degrees before, because as the moon is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, with the full moon, the transits and aspects that are being made as the moon becomes full become important to me as well. And there are 2 things that happen with the full moon, with this full moon. The sun is in Capricorn, and just before the full moon, I'll give you the exact date. Give me 1 sec. The sun is in Capricorn, and the full moon is on the 13th. On the 13th itself, let me see, does the sun... By the time the full moon occurs, the sun has already trined Uranus in Taurus. But on his way to the full moon, over the past 4 or 5 days, as we're heading to the full moon, the sun in Capricorn is trining Uranus in Taurus. And the full moon, for those of you who track sextiles Uranus in Taurus. Now, for anyone who knows the sort of archetypal meaning that Uranus carries, it is, of course, our authenticity, our intuition, our connection to our individual authentic self. That can to others seem rebellious, that can to others seem sometimes rash, immature, but for us is very, very authentic to ourselves. And in an external manifestation, it can often mean the path that is right for us. And it can lead to a kind of liberation, opportunity. Again, I'm going to describe the astrological. I'm not going to overlay this meaning on people whose lives have been kind of essentially rocked by tragedy this past week. But for some of you, it is worth considering over the past 3 or 4 days heading to the full moon, whether from the Capricorn part of the chart, something has come up that can further your journey in the Taurus part of the chart towards the right path for you in the house occupied by Taurus. And I'm going to leave it at that. It's a trine. There's a flow, there's a conversation, there's an opening, there's a liberation. Now, it is the sun trining Uranus. Mercury is going to get in line to trine Uranus on January the 23rd, I believe. So it may be that if there's something that came up, something that has come up, something you are pondering, remember that in the Capricorn part of the chart, because we have the sun and Mercury there, and because we're in the month of Capricorn that was formed by the new moon in Capricorn on December the 29th, for another couple of weeks, and because the Cancer full moon is in reaction to Capricorn season, the month of Capricorn, the new moon occurred in Capricorn. 2 months later, the moon is full in Cancer, and then 2 weeks later, the moon is going to conjunct the sun in Aquarius, and a new month will be born, the month of Aquarius. This will be on, I think it is January the 29th. So while the Capricorn part of the chart is spotlit by the sun, and we are contemplating what it means to bring that part of the chart into some sort of annual alignment, what tasks we take out, what seeds we plant, what do we want to do. Mercury is now in Capricorn as well and is increasing thinking, processing, communicating on that level. As you head towards the 23rd, the sun trining Uranus may translate into processing or communicative action. And really the eclipsiness of the occurrences that we're watching for end by the 20th. So just that's something I'm going to mention. And also with the Uranus part of the chart, with the Taurus part of the chart, remember that Jupiter conjuncted Uranus on April the 20th of 2024. And for about 13 months after that, there can be significant changes trying to align us, create the right beginnings for us in the Taurus part of the chart as a result of that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on April the 20th. So all of that is playing into this full moon. And because the sun is involved, it's particularly important. On the moon side, because if this is a full moon, the full moon herself in Cancer trines Neptune in Pisces. And the full moon is conjunct a retrograde Mars in Cancer. And Mars trines Neptune. So Mars trines Neptune tomorrow on the 12th. So on the way to the moon becoming full, Mars will trine Neptune. And a few hours after the full moon herself will trine Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces since 2012, making it either inspiring us to charitable, spiritual, monastic, creative, artistic, inspired goals in the Pisces part of the chart, or making it very, or making us a little bit delusional. I'm being mild with the a little bit there. Delusional or foggy or unable to deal with matters related to the Pisces part of the chart with any sense of reality or, and this is an important word, responsibility. Neptune can also introduce themes of manipulation and playing things close to the chest, either us or somebody else, or deception, or gaslighting, or things not being entirely clear. As we head to the middle of April, a lot of you have heard this, between Mars in Cancer and Venus and Mercury in Pisces and Aries, and Venus and Mercury going retrograde in March, which is not that far away, and Venus is already going to enter her shadow degree starting January the 18th, which is a week from now. Those transits are really going to seek to be in active conversation with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces primarily in order to help stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. And stabilization can mean any number of things, encouraging us to finally act responsibly in a Saturnian way, since Saturn is also in Pisces. And Saturn now direct is moving really towards Neptune and will be conjuncting Neptune. Neptune is going to move into Aries in March. Saturn is going to move into Aries in May. Both Neptune and Saturn will come back into Pisces, and between September of this year and February of next year, will finish up their Pisces transits. So till May of this year, and then between September and February, September of this year and February of next year, Saturn will actively try to leave Pisces in as stable a shape as possible. But stable can mean, when you're dealing with lost, it can mean that Saturn is just like, what Saturn is trying to do is stop any energy leaks and emotional leaks. So that is what is in process, and is giving us reality checks, and is giving us all lessons that we can learn. And all of that is in play here. The nice thing is that as we head to the full moon, a retrograde Mars trines Neptune, and the full moon trines Neptune. And that is the biggest and most important. There's something about this full moon that points to a certain assertiveness. It points to us standing up for ourselves somehow. Now, this assertiveness and standing up ourselves can have to do with taking some action in the Cancer part of the chart that structures and builds a strong foundation for spiritual or monastic or creative goals related to the house occupied by Pisces and the Neptune transit through Pisces in 2012. And as you know, Neptune's transit through Pisces really kind of got a massive boost in 2014, 15, especially 16, 17. It could have been a crisis. It could have been, when things really kind of came frayed around the edges, or things really became kind of irresponsible, or things really became kind of deceptive, or whatever it was around that time. So so with a retrograde Mars, and it's interesting with a retrograde Mars, it could have less directly aggressive and a more passive, behind the scenes way of standing up for ourselves. A retrograde Mars in Cancer, not a sign he's happy to be in, because he is not able to maneuver as comfortably or as directly or as assertively as he can, is conjunct the full moon. Intuitively, emotionally, everything is pointing to either structuring spiritual, monastic, artistic goals in the Pisces part of the chart from Cancer, or combating, setting boundaries, standing up for ourselves somehow, in connection to Neptunian deception and fogginess. From it could even mean that if in the Pisces part of the chart you have not been able to act totally responsibly, that you now are able to, from a kind of more behind the scenes or a little bit more, I'll put pen to paper, I'll there could also be, you could have epiphanies, you could have your way of dealing, as I've said with Mars retrograde, it's very much us re-looking at how we're approaching conflict and how we're approaching going after what it is that we want. As I've described the Mars retrograde energy to you, it's a little bit like being in the middle of a construction project and having to revise your plans for some reason. Or, I remember seeing Henry IV parts 1 and 2 recently, and it's this thing of, when people are planning for battle, which hill are you going to go down and which valley are you going to lay siege in? And then you take a step back and you're like, oh, but if they attack from here, then we should do this and we should do, it's a re-looking at, because Mars is so much the general, and the commander and the soldier, looking at those kind of plans around how am I going to go after what I want, or what is my strategy, or how am I going to deal with this kind of conflict situation. But there is something, on the one hand, from the sun in Capricorn, there's the ability to be open to an opportunity that can lead you in the right direction in the Taurus part of the chart. But more to the point of the full moon, things may be gathering energetically in such a way that encourage you to set some boundaries. We can set boundaries by organizing ourselves around ambitions and goals that are, as I've said, spiritual, monastic, therapeutic, Neptunian, Piscean, artistic, particularly musical, with Neptune, as I've said, the primary lessons are very much around nothing and nobody is yours. And I have to say that kind of, when you look at a certain type of devastation, you really have to take stock of the fact that, what do we invest our time in, really? And what do we invest our value in? And Pisces and Neptune are known for, they're known to encourage a lack of individuation, to really see ourselves as part of a collective, first and foremost. And so therefore to encourage understanding and compassion and love and surrender and surrender and surrender. And when you have Neptune in Pisces, it is surrender, surrender, and surrender. Now, if you've been, in more material or practical terms, been a little too surrendering and things in the Pisces part of the chart have just gone awry and need attention, then this is the kind of full moon that can help you, whether it is in laying boundaries or whether it is in having a structured to-do list or starting to bring some order to the chaos in the Pisces part of the chart that's fair and is there. But when we're, just archetypally, when we're looking at a full moon in Cancer trining Neptune and Pisces, Cancer being the sign of home, land, property, where it feels like to be at home, and Neptune being a planet of loss and a recognition of surrender and release. I don't like this kind of astrology, but there's a part of me that just has to salute and surrender this kind of very blocky, basic iconography. I mean, what do you say? What is puzzling in the wake of so much tragedy, and I know that that tragedy is not occurring even across California, much less across the states or across the world. And this is a video for anybody who finds it. It's hard for me living in Los Angeles not to, and knowing people who have suffered losses, to kind of look at this full moon and just go, Sun trine Uranus and full moon trine Neptune and conjunct Mars. Mars, of course, being the fiery red planet in Cancer. You know, the iconography is almost so clear and so vivid that it's just like the red planet conjuncts the full moon in the house of homeland and property and trines Neptune and Pisces, you know, both the planet and the sign associated with release and surrender. And a recognition that, as I say, in Pisces, in the 12th house with the planet Neptune, nothing and nobody is yours. What are you building? Where are you placing your... And with Neptune, what is so agonizing and frustrating and painful about Neptune and the sign of Pisces in their rigor and their ruthless pursuit of the eradication of individuation and ego, that's really what they're trying to erase, is the strong sense of self and strong sense of possession and strong sense of identity, and to understand what our real identity is and what we're really connected to. And that eventually even your body and the things that we are so fixated about, our appearance and our relation, you know, all of that really does get left behind. And you may not even whether whatever you've done, whether it's actually going to have a positive impact or a negative impact, if you actually think that you're doing things in order for them to have a positive impact or building value in some way, you have no idea whether, if you're putting money in a trust or a bank account, whether anyone will someday be able to avail of it or not, or whether it's going to become part of a crash. You know, you really have, on some level, you can try to do things as best you can, but you really have no control. And there you have the Virgo-Pisces axis. Virgo, I'm going to manage and control and organize and execute and get to my desk. And the typical Virgoic, uptight archetype of everything is in my control. I'm going to manage and control and be productive, and everything's in my calendar, and this is going to happen at 2:15, and this is going to happen at 2:20, and this is going to happen at 2:30, and don't even think about messing with my to-do list, and don't even touch my office supplies, and, you know, order. And Pisces, which is just, you know, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stare into space, and what is time anyway? So we have a full moon conjuncting Mars in Cancer, trining Neptune. What puzzles me in the wake of so much tragedy is, of course, are these trines and this connection and opportunity. For the purpose of this video, I can interpret it quite simply and quite securely as, from the Capricorn part of the chart to the Taurus part of the chart, what is the opportunity for liberation and for following the right path? It can be an opportunity. It can be something you're processing with regard to how to align the Capricorn part of the chart so that you can move towards the right path in the Taurus part of your chart, the right path for you, your individual path, your authentic path. And with the full moon conjunct Mars, a retrograde Mars trine Neptune, it is time to structure loose plans related to the Pisces part of the chart, or set appropriate boundaries. And there is, through all of this, a kind of standing up for ourselves component to it all. I have already added in, it is also not just a full moon, it is a full Mars. The red planet is full because the sun is opposite it. And the sun-Mars opposition becomes exact on the 15th of January. So both the moon and Mars are powerful. And Mars is the planet of pursuing our goals and setting boundaries, conflict, and pursuing what we desire. Assertiveness, the masculine planet, the archetypal hunter-gatherer, the warrior. Mars notoriously has his negative side: temper, violence, aggressiveness, rapaciousness. But not much is going to happen with just Venus. Venus and Mars kind of complement this, the passive nurturer, flow, what we value, harmony needs Mars, and Mars needs Venus in order for, sort of the full archetypal palette to be available to us. Now, Venus, as I said, is playing an important role in this full moon as well, and I'm going to come to that in a second, because she is very much part of this particular narrative of the planets, the full moon in Cancer, trining Neptune in Pisces. One of the aspects that is getting closer and closer as we head to the middle of February is the North Node conjuncting Neptune. Now, the North Node is still in Aries, but by the time we get to the middle of February, the North Node will have moved into Pisces and will conjunct Neptune. So the Pisces part of the chart, as I've said, 2025 in some ways, the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by Pisces, is the most intensely affected. And especially as we head towards March and April, that intensifies even more, because the personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus already, Venus and Mercury retrograde, are all jumbled in there with the North Node and Neptune and Saturn. In fact, do I have this with me? Let me see. I was looking at some, by the time we get to the Aquarius new moon, we're going to have 4 planets in Pisces and 4 in Aquarius, if you count the Sun and the Moon. By the time we get to the Leo full moon, it's 3 and 3. By the time we get to the Pisces new moon on February the 27th, we've got the Sun, Moon, Saturn, Mercury, North Node, and Neptune in Pisces. So that's 6 planets in, I'm using the word planets relatively loosely, in Pisces. By the time we get to the Virgo lunar eclipse, we've got 4, still the most. By the time we get to the Aries new moon solar eclipse, on March the 29th, we've still got 4 planets in Pisces and 4 in Aries. So all the way till the end of March, Pisces is hosting anywhere between 3 right now, but 4 very soon. It's somewhere between 4 and 6 entities at a time. So it's, and this only takes us to for the first 4 or 5 months of this year. Then we get Saturn and Neptune back into Pisces, in the last quarter of this year, in the first couple of months of next year. So that's where there's all this intensity. Part of the intensity has to do with Saturn and Neptune. Neptune having been in Pisces since 2012, Saturn coming in to stabilize Pisces and make us act more responsibly, and to stop the energy leaks and the financial leaks, and to get us to learn our lessons and process our lessons and set appropriate boundaries and stabilize the side, since March 2023. And now since July of 2024, when we had 2 months before the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse in September of 24, but increasingly as we head to all the way to February 27, the eclipses are going to be on the Pisces Virgo axis. And with the eclipses, with the North Node coming to Pisces, it could be it adds another element in the sign of Pisces, which is that not only is the North Node throwing his weight behind stabilizing the sign of Pisces during 2025, but it could also add another meaning, bring in something else energetically or physically, which means that leaning into the Pisces part of the chart becomes part of our narrative and our next set of growth and evolution. I will be doing a video on the North Node Neptune conjunction, so it's going to get interpreted separately, but it's just my way to throw that in there and say, even though the full moon in Cancer is not trining the North Node at this point in time, and the North Node Neptune conjunction is within 5 degrees, but not it's going to get closer and closer and closer. It's about 3 degrees apart right now. Um, we you know, as we head towards February, it will become more and more of a presence. We can't quite ignore the fact that I have said to you that by the time we get to this full moon in Cancer, we are completely in the mix of this blob that takes us to the middle to the end of April. And the purpose of that blob is primarily to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart so that we can get everything we can out of that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, and most importantly, the Aries North Node eclipses, the last of which will be on March the 29th. And the processing of that eclipse takes us to the end of the first week of June. And at the end of the first week of June, 3 things happen. 1, we finally lose the energy of that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. Number 2, Jupiter changes signs into Cancer, from Gemini to Cancer. Number 3, it is 2 months after the March 29th Aries solar eclipse, which happens while Mercury is retrograde. So if you have Mercury direct in your chart, you will likely feel that eclipse the week before and after May 29th, which takes us to the end of the first week of June. And by the time we get to this particular full moon in Cancer on Monday, with the full moon and a retrograde Mars trining Neptune, we are going to be ready to take some action to start to stabilize that Pisces part of the chart, period. From now to even with the new moon in Capricorn at the beginning of this year, even with the weekly overview I did last week, we were still a little bit in the penumbra. Now we're in the umbra. Now, between now and the middle of April is one escalating set of events. It's a wave of change. And at least as far as the full moon is concerned, it has these trines that sort of opens doorways for us. Now let's talk about Venus, because out of the 4 aspects that I encoded into this full moon, one of them is part of the full moon, which is the Sun opposite Mars. The second one we've touched on, the North Node conjuncting Neptune in Pisces. And we know that the full moon and Mars are trining Neptune at around this time. And we'll talk about the North Node conjunction anyway. North Node Neptune conjunction in a separate video. It's going to become more and more relevant, more and more alive as we head into February. The 2 other aspects that are encoded into this full moon are a little bit more meaningful, edgy. The planet Venus is in Pisces, and on the 18th, Venus enters her shadow degrees, 18th of January, which means that she enters the period of the chart that she's going to go over 3 times between now and the middle of April, or something like that. When does Venus enter Aries for the final time? Give me 1 second. Or shall I just tell you when Venus is going to leave her shadow degrees? That's probably a better way to look at this. Venus is going to leave her shadow degrees on... Oh, Lordy. Mars, Venus. Venus leaves her shadow degrees on May the 26th. So January 18th to May the 26th, Venus is going to go over the same degrees in Pisces and Aries 3 times. And Venus's retrograde is much more centered on Pisces, because she's going to conjunct Saturn, conjunct Neptune on February the 1st. She will conjunct the North Node. Those are the 3 bodies she's going to conjunct 3 times. And except for the first conjunction with the North Node, all the other conjunctions will occur in Pisces. She will conjunct Mercury, on March the 11th, and she will conjunct the Sun on March the 22nd. And she goes retrograde, she goes March the 1st, and she goes direct on April the 13th. There's a Venus retrograde video right after March 1. It's the second video I did before this. The one video I did before this was the weekly overview for this last week, and the one before this was the Venus video. You can look at that for more details. Specifically, Venus enters shadow Jan 18th, goes retrograde Mars 1st, goes direct April 13th, leaves shadow May 26th, conjuncts Saturn, Neptune, the North Node 3 times, conjuncts Mercury once on March the 11th, conjuncts the Sun once on March the 22nd. More details in that Venus video. But Venus on the 18th, on the day she enters her shadow degrees, conjuncts Saturn. And the Venus retrograde is totally defined by the Saturn conjunction. Totally. And at this point in time, we're going to start to feel that conjunction, even though the 18th is 7 days away. Venus is within 5 degrees of Saturn, and increasingly we're going to feel that. Venus is also, before she does that, before the conjunction, the other aspect that she's making is that she is squaring Jupiter on the 14th, one day after the full moon. Jupiter is in Gemini. Now let's break this down, because it's the last of the pieces we need to talk about for this full moon. Wherever Venus goes, as I've mentioned to you numerous times, she asks the question, how can we bring this part of the chart into alignment with what you value? And Venus brings opportunities, relationship opportunities, financial opportunities. Sometimes, depending on the part of the chart she's transiting, it can be an interview, it can be an audition, it can be an opportunity, it can be an offer, it can be day-to-day luck. The challenge that Venus faces in Pisces is that she's going to conjunct Saturn. And so it is an opportunity towards responsibility and consequence, dealing with finances and relationships. Another way of putting it is, get serious about your finances and your relationships related to the Pisces part of the chart. Getting serious with Saturn means no fantasy, no time for BS, no room for immaturity. No room for anything that is going to backfire on you. It is not. Venus is a planet of flow, diplomacy, harmony, constructiveness. Saturn rewards thoughtfulness, clean intentions, maturity, responsibility, taking accountability for our actions, particularly financial consequences, relationship consequences, acting to repair. If in the Pisces part of the chart, responsibility needs to be taken on monetary or relationship issues that have been suffering for a long time, particularly since 2012, escalating since 2012, and particularly since 2015, 16, 17, Venus conjunct Saturn may very well be the let's get all of this in order. When Venus is retrograde and comes back into Pisces and is getting ready to go direct, within the space of a week or 10 days, when she's retrograde, she conjuncts Saturn again, goes direct and conjuncts Saturn again. So this Venus conjuncting Saturn, after the conjunction with Saturn on the 18th, things ease up a little. Venus starts to move towards Neptune, and then Venus moves into Aries. She doesn't go retrograde till March the 1st. But then when Venus is retrograde, and then she moves back to conjunct Neptune, and then she comes all the way back to where she was around January the 18th, and conjunct Saturn twice. It's a little bit like as we head into next week, which is still an eclipse week. And it's an eclipse week on the axis of Virgo and Pisces. Venus kind of throws down the gauntlet. Now, one thing that is really lovely that is about to happen is that Venus will as these weeks progress. Venus is getting ready on January the 25th to trine Mars in Cancer. So if as you head to this full moon, there's a lot of space for resolution between now and the middle of April. As I've said to you, with this Venus retrograde, with the Mercury retrograde, with the Mars retrograde, the number of trines that are being formed are almost overwhelmingly apparent. Even something with a Mars retrograde and Mars opposition Pluto, all of which are things we should fear, or at least be cautious about. They're surrounded by Mars trining Saturn, and then Mars trining Neptune, and Mars trining the North Node, and Venus is going to trine Mars. And, you know, the one thing that has a truly sobering, jolting effect is the Venus conjunct Saturn. We would like to not have to get serious about finances and relationships. We would like to kind of roll along and kind of enjoy life in those. But with Venus conjuncting Saturn on January the 18th and then 2 more times, a lot is riding on this conjunction. And Venus is also bringing the Pisces part of the chart into alignment, which is the primary theme of 2025. Certainly the primary theme between now, increasingly into March and April. Protecting what we want to protect, because Venus is about our values and what we value and what is of value to us. It's just that in the Pisces part of the chart, she makes 2 conjunctions that make a mockery of what we value. Venus conjunct Saturn, at least, is a little bit more helpful insofar as Saturn is asking us to take what we value seriously and to stop energy leaks. When Venus moves forward and conjuncts Neptune, on, or like, when is this happening? Does it happen in early February? I think it does. Sorry. Now it's going to drive me crazy until I give you that date. Give me 1 sec, please. When does Venus conjunct Neptune? The Venus-Neptune conjunction is, I mean, can be an intensely artistic conjunction, but you're just like, talk about a conjunction of losing what you value. You know, it's just like, ugh. We would much rather have Venus conjuncting Jupiter, right? Even Venus conjuncting Mercury. I'm going to bring this home in a second, guys, and we're going to be done soon. I do. It's going to drive me crazy if I don't give you that date. Thanks for your patience. February the 1st. February the 1st. Venus conjuncts Neptune. Okay. As we contemplate bringing the Pisces part of the chart into alignment, it would not surprise me at all if you end up taking steps to communicate with, to contemplate, and this is why, to some extent, things like full moons and weekly overviews are less important than keeping an eye on when things are happening. Part of the reason why I'm telling you when Venus is going to conjunct Neptune, or part of the reason why I'm telling you when Venus will trine Mars, is, as I've said, between now and the middle of April, it's one energetic blob. You can't just look at something in an isolated way, because with the Mars retrograde and then going direct on February 24th, and with Venus and Mercury getting ready to go retrograde in March, Venus going retrograde on March the 1st, Venus entering her shadow degrees on the 18th, it's all just one, all the aspects of that transits that are happening, aspects being made, are part of one narrative that takes us to the middle of April, to the end of April. The primary focus of this full moon is to stand up for ourselves and to act to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart and to avail of opportunities that bring the Capricorn part of the chart into alignment in such a way that we can move in the direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of the chart. That's the primary thing. Encoded into this full moon is an aspect that is getting closer and closer and becomes exact on January the 18th, which is Venus conjunct Saturn. And that is a sobering look, a responsible. I mean, if Venus goes through a part of the chart saying, how shall I bring this? What do we need to do to bring this into alignment? The fact that she meets up with Saturn means it becomes a, how are we bringing this into alignment? It is serious. It is grounded. There's a recognition that there is not much alignment. There's a recognition that lessons need to be processed. There's a recognition that there might be consequences. There's a recognition that if you reach out to someone, you might get a stern response. There might be a kind of King of Swords energy. In fact, you may need to bring a kind of King of Swords energy. And I don't mean, I mean a discernment. With the King of Swords, sometimes you can take him to be the kind of person who's slashing that sword about and getting ready to, yes, there's a boundary setting component to it. That boundary setting component has more to do with a full Mars and a full moon in Cancer, acting to either structure or counter Neptune's effect in Pisces. With the Venus-Saturn conjunction, the King of Swords is about us cutting our own crap and becoming very real at cause and effect and responsibility and what we need to do to act responsibly and what we need to do to repair, what we need to reach out, what we need to do to manage financial and relationship, and yes, other Venusian things, artistic. By the way, when Venus goes retrograde, it's a notorious time to make changes to your appearance. That's March the 15th to the end of April or thereabouts. I think I've already given you those dates. March the 1st to March the 1st to April the 13th. So give that a few days so that Venus can, because Venus is going to be stationary on March the 1st and April the 13th. But that is a notorious time to go get yourself a radically new haircut or do some sort of plastic surgery procedure or something like, I would not attempt that. If you have Venus retrograde in your birth chart, you can experiment with what a Venus retrograde time period somehow make you more financially and relationship-wise in sync. But with all of that said, coming back to where we are, bringing the Pisces part of the chart, and this has been a theme throughout. We dealt with this in all of December. During December, during the Sagittarius month and Sagittarius season, we were contemplating how bringing the Sagittarius part of the chart into alignment was going to help bring the Gemini part of the chart, where Jupiter is currently retrograde, into alignment in such a way that all of that contributed to stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, because we had Sagittarius and Gemini opposing each other. As the personal planets went through Sagittarius, they opposed Jupiter. We had a full moon in Gemini on December the 15th. And all that those oppositions also were in conversation with Saturn in Pisces and Neptune and Pisces. That connection between the Pisces and the Gemini part of the chart, and particularly Jupiter ending a 12-13-year cycle and starting a 12-13-year cycle, and what needs to be ended, what needs to be cleared out energetically, how does the Etch-a-Sketch need to be wiped clean so that you can move in a more aligned direction in the Gemini part of the chart. Venus's transit through Pisces, it's not as if Venus is going to trine Jupiter 3 times, or square Jupiter 3 times, excuse me, she's squaring Jupiter. But there's something that Venus could do in building a bridge, communicating, setting boundaries, acting responsibly towards relationships, processing consequences, finances, that will help Jupiter create the appropriate endings in the space for a new beginning. And the conjunction with Saturn is probably, for me, in the first 3 months of the year, it is, if you were to say what is the most important aspect in the first 3 months of this year, it won't even be the Mars opposite Pluto that we had in the beginning of the year. It's not even, for me, the North Node Neptune conjunction. it is Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces. Because it happens 3 times, because it is such a defining aspect related to this Venus retrograde that is coming up between March the 1st and April the 13th. So you may be very, very aware now and going into next week, and when it comes to this full moon, where the energy leaks are in the Pisces part of the chart, how much of that has to do with your not having acted proactively to manage in a secure, stable, responsible, structured manner the Pisces part of the chart, whether that has to do with the setting of boundaries, whether that has to do with being in communication where you are at fault, whether that has to do with looking at cause and effect and processing consequences. With Saturn transiting any part of the chart, Saturn is also keen for us to, no matter how unfair certain situations or certain things may be, for us to learn and mature and understand our role in how things got to where they got to. And with Venus conjuncting Saturn, there could be a financial consequence. That could be a relationship consequence. A need to structure, a need to stabilize, a need to mature, a need to act maturely, a need to look at consequence, a need to, and I can't help but think that somewhere Venus conjuncting Saturn and the full moon and Mars in Cancer trining Neptune, those energies can be in conversation with each other. As far as the full moon is concerned, and as far as this weekend is concerned, the next 48 to 72 hours is concerned, there's a strong element of taking the action maybe in a more passive way, taking the action to help stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. As next week gets going more and more, the actions may need to be more related to the Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is bringing the Pisces part into the chart with financial and relationship perspective very, very seriously and very responsibly, and starting to take those actions. And those initial phone calls and those initial conversations may not be the easiest. As I said, Saturn has we're dealing with a certain amount of King of Swords energy here. He doesn't look like, he's not really in the mood to crack a joke. He's sort of in the mood of getting down to business and let's sort this out and let's stabilize things and let's do what needs to be done. The Venus conjunction Saturn is going to have its own video in the next, tomorrow. I'll tell you the weekly overview, but I'll do the weekly overview tomorrow as well. At the end of the day, a lot of what is playing out till the 18th is covered in this full moon. Maybe I won't do a weekly overview. Maybe this acts as a week. At the end of the day, look, we've got, where are we today? Jan the 11th. Tomorrow, Mars trines Neptune. The 13th, Sun trines Uranus, and we have the Cancer full moon. 14th, Venus squares Jupiter. 15th, Sun opposes Mars. 18th, Venus conjunct Saturn. All of these aspects are encoded into the full moon. I don't think there's any point in me doing a weekly overview. It's all here. I'll put it in the title. The one thing that I do want to do is I do want to talk about the Venus-Saturn conjunction. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, to kind of get our mind in that direction and to really start to set ourselves up for Venus entering her shadow degrees. By the end of the week on the 19th, the energy shifts because the Sun enters Aquarius, and we don't quite start the month of Aquarius because we don't have that new moon till the 29th, but the Sun enters, trines the South Node in Libra. We've still got some energy in Capricorn working her way out the following week, with Mercury squaring Chiron and trining Uranus, and but we're headed to the Sun conjuncting Pluto, when he enters Aquarius. By the time we get to the end of this coming week, not only are we getting out of this kind of eclipsy intensification, the energy is also starting to get split now into the Aquarius part of the chart. But right now, there is this intensification of what we need to do from the Cancer part of the chart to the full moon in and of itself. What do we need to do from the Cancer part of the chart to stabilize and structure ambitious goals, creative goals, therapeutic goals, musical goals, artistic goals, spiritual goals, monastic goals in the Pisces part of the chart? What do we need to do to stabilize leaks, deceptions, deceptive behavior, unclear behavior from our part, somebody else's part, gaslighting? What do we need to do to stabilize an inability to act responsibly in the Pisces part of the chart? That's where the energy is. As the week progresses, we are much more focused on that Venus-Saturn conjunction, where the universe may throw down a bit of a gauntlet to us and say, I mean business, till the middle to the end of April. You have got to get the financial and relationship aspects of this crisis in Pisces under control. And when we get to that Venus-Saturn conjunction on the 18th, and even with this full moon, even now, we're starting to feel it build. There's no room for let emotion fuel, perhaps. Let the retrograde Mars, full moon, emotion, those are both emotional planets. When it comes to the Venus-Saturn conjunction, there is no room for emotions or reactivity or temper or anger, or you will pay the price. There is no room for lackadaisicalness. With the full moon, if emotionally it's flaring up for you that some actions need to be taken to set boundaries, or some action needs to be taken to continue to structure all those types of plans I mentioned before, then over the next 48 to 72 hours, by all means do so. But when it comes to the Venus-Saturn conjunction, it could be that you're codifying something, or it could be that you're doing something responsible financially. But it isn't done till the middle to the end of April. Because remember, Venus conjunct Saturn now, and then she's going to go, and then she's going to come back, and Mercury will go through Pisces and Aries and come back. You can't finish up on it for some reason. But you can start a certain process of acting responsibly and for the long term with regard to relationships and finances. I feel like I've said enough, because the more I say now, I'm going to be repeating myself. And part of the reason why I'm doing this is, I'm struggling for more specificity, but the specificity will only come when we're looking at each of our birth charts and each of our lives. And for those of us who believe in astrology, finding what this conversation is between these aspects and these transits in our own chart. So I think I've kind of exhausted this full moon. As I said, I will talk about the Venus-Saturn conjunction. I'm not going to do a weekly overview, because I think the weekly overview is in this. We don't need a separate weekly overview talking about the Sun opposite Mars and Venus square Jupiter. And I mean, all the aspects that are happening next week up to the 18th are mentioned in this video. The thing that shifts is the Sun moves into Aquarius next Sunday, and that's fine. We'll talk about Aquarius and everything that's going on in Aquarius as a heads up as this week progresses. I think there are 3 videos out there that need to be looked at and done. Venus conjunct Saturn is next, and then either run into and do an Aquarius overview, because that's going to start up in greater earnest as we head to the end of January and towards the 19th, and then take a look at that North Node Neptune conjunction. I will leave it at that. If you would like me to take a look at your birth chart from a 2025 perspective, and certainly the Pisces part of the chart is going to come up in that, there is a 2025 reading being offered at a discount. go ahead and email me at the email address in the description box below. For that or my other readings, regular readings, there's a 30 to 40 minute option around one question. There's my regular reading that I do as well. You can inquire there and I can get you information about rates. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Feel free to tell friends, other people who you feel might benefit from this content. Next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. Hover over that wiggly bell on top, click on that, and you'll be notified when I do a new video. Thanks button underneath this video, you can use that to contribute to the channel. Comment on the video or like the video. Those are free ways in which you can support this channel. It gives the video greater circulation on YouTube. I hope you found this helpful and useful. I'm glad to be a little bit more collected. I'm still, I think like a lot of Angelinos, a little bit nervous because till yesterday, we still would keep getting notifications about how there were still evacuations happening or there was still a fire, another fire that had broken out or whatever. So hopefully, as we get to that full moon, it's not going to mean more of a flare-up. Although with the full moon conjuncting Mars in Cancer, you know, whatever. We'll see how it goes and we'll take it one step at a time. But I am glad to be a little bit more, just a little bit more rested. And I'm going to try and get some more rest over the next couple of days so that I'm a little bit more balanced. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care, and I will be back in touch soon.